Well, again, good morning, everyone. I've got 10 o'clock and just we'll get started because we want to make sure that we respect all of your time. Just to let you know, you are part of a 5-part series called Leadership in Challenging Times that Broad Insights is putting together. This is a free series and there's no sales or solicitation. What we've done is take an opportunity each week to talk about differing things. Last week, our friends over at Montgomery and Company spent some time talking about the SBA loans and the possibilities of getting funding. If you've got questions about any of these things, contact me at info@Broad Insights. This week, we're going to talk about sales and marketing during this time of crisis. And I've got the privilege of working with some excellent coaches. Joining me today is Tim Joyner, one of our partners. Tim is going to facilitate this discussion. In addition to being a partner of Broad Insights, he runs a marketing firm. Tim Morgan is sort of a serial entrepreneur, and he's also a partner with Broad Insights. And Michael Anderson, a good friend of mine and part of our Broad Insights team, is going to talk a little bit about sales. So thank you for joining. I'm going to turn this over to Tim Joyner. We have 3 more weeks of this. Next week, our plans are to talk about estate planning with an attorney as well as a financial planner, and just making sure that we all have our ducks in a row on that. And just want to, during these difficult times, to try to provide some value to you for your leadership in your organization. Tim, thanks for the work, and I'm going to turn this over to you now for facilitation.
All right. Well, thanks, Jim. I am delighted to be on this call this morning, both as a participant. I expect to learn a lot and benefit from it, and also looking forward to sharing a few ideas with you. Somebody has said that if you can't find joy in the snow, you will have less joy in your life, but the same amount of snow. Let me give that to you one more time. If you can't find joy in the snow, you will have less joy in your life, but the same amount of snow. That doesn't resonate quite as much with those of us in the South as it does maybe some of you that live in other parts of the country where you deal with snow, a lot of snow, and you get tired of it after a while. That's my childhood. I grew up in the Midwest. We had a lot of snow. But I think that's relevant in this situation, right? None of us chose COVID-19, and none of us can make it go away. We can all adhere to best practices like washing our hands thoroughly and avoiding big groups, but we can't just, decide that we're done and check out. So the snow has fallen, but all of us get to choose sort of how we react to it. And that's something that I've admired about Jim, even in the past 2 weeks on these calls, and sort of as a person who he is. Jim is really good at finding joy in the snow, at finding opportunity in crisis, and figuring out how can we capture the learning value here? How can we make the best of a bad situation? And so that's kind of a theme that I think you'll hear from the 3 of us that are speaking on the call today, is how to find joy in the snow. How do we make the most and capture the lessons and seize the opportunity? So for some of you, that's more difficult than others. I realize that on this call, we have people that are really, your life has been upended and your business has been effectively decimated. There are probably a few people on the call that are in the opposite condition, where because of the product and service you sell, you're looking at a really good month or a good quarter. But regardless of your situation, I think there are things that we can learn and profit from in this, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I just want to get us started by a real quick, very brief overview of what you can expect from the next hour. All 3 of us are going to make very short presentations, and then we'll have about 30 minutes for Q&A. So I'll introduce the topics in reverse order. Michael Anderson, who, by the way, as Jim said, serial entrepreneur, very successful sales coach and sales trainer, personal friend of both Jim and me, and probably a number of you as well, published author, coaches companies all over America. One of the things that has impressed me about Michael is I've seen him command large rooms full of really successful people, salespeople, business owners, people like you all, and have walked out and heard people saying, wow, that was some of the best sales training I've ever heard. So I'm really delighted to have him on the call. He's going to talk to us about how to build trust in an online world when suddenly you can't be face to face with your clients. How do you replace that human component, and how do you build trust? I think it'll be really valuable. Tim Morgan, also a serial entrepreneur, been an executive and senior leader at some really big companies that you all would recognize. Now is the CEO of a couple companies that I think have, what, Tim, am I right? You've sold over $1 billion worth of stuff between those two companies over the past 10 or 15 years. So really successful person, happy to have his perspective today. He's going to talk about perspective in crisis, humility, and how do you respond really creatively? How do you seize opportunity and be innovative? I think there'll be some really good ideas from him as well. And then I'm going to kick us off with a short discussion of brand building in crisis. So how do we avoid a couple of ditches in a situation like this, and how do we invest in the future? So I'll just make a few remarks about that and then turn it over to Tim and then Michael. So I think in a crisis like this, our temptation is to fall into one of two ditches. On the one hand, you can stop the presses. You can freeze everything. You say, I'm going to stop all spending. I'm going to stop all marketing, advertising, brand building. I'm just going to sort of retreat into a cave, try to preserve my cash and my company, and really withdraw into a shell. And for a few companies, you know, if you run a hotel or a 5-star Michelin restaurant or something and you just can't operate, that's probably the best you can hope for. But for most of us, that would be a mistake to just retreat and stop the presses on everything. So that's one ditch that I want to propose that we need to avoid. The other ditch that is tempting is to say, how do I get cash as fast as possible? And it's a little frantic. It's a little short-sighted. So it's, how do I move more product off my shelf? How do I create gimmicky things that can make a quick buck? How do I spam my list and wear out my prospects with these deep discounts? How do I sell my inventory maybe below cost just to keep money coming in the door? And again, sometimes it's a matter of survival, and maybe you have to do something like that. But the problem with that is you are borrowing from the future. Either you're selling things, you're teaching your customers that your product or service really isn't worth all that much and they should expect to pay half price for it, or you're wearing out your list or you're selling future sales now at a discount. There's a real temptation to be kind of desperate. And that would be the other ditch that I would encourage us to avoid. And so in the middle is what I would say is building your brand. And that can sound a little bit opportunistic or mercenary, and I don't mean it that way at all. I mean, there's a real opportunity to connect with your audience, both your current clients, which I think Michael is going to talk about a little bit, and also your prospects in new, really human ways, in demonstrating real empathy and humanity, in not being tone deaf, but being realistic about acknowledging that the world has changed, and figure out what your clients' needs are, not what they were a few weeks ago, but what are their needs today, and how can you creatively, innovatively pivot to solve them. So I just want to give you a couple of quick stories that maybe will serve as inspiration, and then I'm going to get out of the way and let these other two guys talk. But I could tell lots of stories. There are stories of really big companies, like Delta is one. I don't know if, how many of you are frequent travelers and who you travel with. For whatever reason, I'm on the list of a whole bunch of different airlines. And so I've gotten communication from Delta and Southwest and United and American and all these different airlines. And it's been really interesting to see how they have responded. And in my opinion, anyway, Delta has far and away done the best job of demonstrating that kind of empathy and humanity and reality. They have made it very customer centric. And I don't know how many of you, I can see most of your videos. How many of you have seen emails or communication from Delta? Have any of you seen those? Yeah, almost all of you. I don't know if you've been as impressed as I have, but they have been talking about how, they've been realistic that this is going to be a really bad quarter for us. it's going to be really difficult, and you're going to miss some perks, and flying is not going to be as good right now. They've been realistic about that, but they've also been realistic about, the fact that some people still have to get where they're going, and we're committed to serving you. They have implemented, for example, free flights from around the country for healthcare workers to get them to New York and New Jersey and stuff like that. But they've also been really fast to respond and say, look, here's how we have trained our people to disinfect our planes. We've introduced these new fogging mechanisms and this new steam cleaning mechanism. And they've been sending videos of how they clean planes to make sure that there's no virus on the surfaces. And it's been in stark contrast for me with some of the other sort of budget carriers who have been much more like, we're still flying, come fly with us, it's safe. It's been really interesting to see that customer-centric human element from the leadership at Delta. More locally, I've seen, I don't know if, I'm looking to see who's on this call. I don't know if Teresa or Scott Case. Teresa or Scott, are you on this? I know you were last week. I thought some of you know Piano Central Studios. So I have 3 kids in Piano Central, in kinder music and piano lessons. And I thought at a local level, they have done a fantastic job of responding to this in, like, how do you teach kinder music? You've got 20 little toddlers running around waving scarves and shaking instruments and beating on drums. Like, how do you do that when you can't be together? I think Teresa and her organization have done a really great job of, they shut down for a week. They trained all of their teachers, many of whom have never used Zoom. Then they over communicated with parents, many of you whom have never been on a video conference. And they said they over communicated, they had practice sessions, they taught everybody how to do this. And so now every Tuesday morning, my 2 little kids and 20 or 30 other little kids are all up on little video blocks. And Teresa is waving scarves and singing and dancing and engaging these kids. But it's not just that she's taken an offline activity and gone online. She's really thought about how to improve the experience even more. So she gets on early and personally greets each child by name and has a little conversation with them. And she's sending them little videos throughout the week. She's added extra story times where this is not part of kinder music, but she'll get out a storybook age appropriate for whatever the class is and invite all the parents to get their kids on some other day. And she'll read them a story and engage them for 15 or 20 minutes. She's also figured out that although you have to limit the physical size of a class, you don't have to limit the virtual size of a class. And so if you are a kinder music subscriber, you can attend not only your class, but the Tuesday class and the Wednesday class and the Thursday class and the Friday class, which is brilliant for a stay-at-home mom or dad that suddenly is a homeschool parent, doesn't really want to be a homeschool parent, trying to figure out how to entertain these kids. Well, now I've got all these options, and it's not really costing Piano Central anything, but I just think they have done a really great job of figuring out how to set up technology to do virtual recitals and point the camera at the keyboard so that I can watch your fingering and engage kids, and really created as much or more value as they were offline. So kudos to Scott and Teresa and the folks over at Piano Central. Lots more stories I could tell you about ways that companies have pivoted and really built their brand. But these people, Delta and Piano Central and lots of others that you've had experience with, I think are winning hearts and minds of their customers. They're not just capturing a dollar. They're not overreacting or being frantic. They are thinking about, what do my clients need? What are they worried about? What are they struggling with? And how can I speak to that and create connection and value, adding leadership and creativity? They're winning hearts and minds. And at the end of all this, I think they're going to have greater loyalty, greater longevity. Their customers are probably going to be less sensitive to price aberrations. These kinds of companies are going to come out stronger. Now, obviously, you have to have the cash reserves and the capitalization and all of that to be able to weather this storm. But if you have that, and you can think about, how can I communicate and lend leadership and creativity and value right now? Don't worry about discounting my things. In fact, I'd rather see you give away product than discount it, because people can understand that you're giving away in a crisis more than they can selling. It's harder to recover from a deep discount than it is from giving it away. But for the companies that are really creating value and are connecting with their audience and demonstrating leadership and stability, I think they're going to come out with stronger brands, stronger reputations, greater longevity and loyalty, and are going to really come out ahead. So my encouragement to you is avoid the ditch of stopping all spending and like retreating into your shell, and avoid the ditch of deep discounts and frantic spam emails where this is on sale, buy our product, and think about how can you creatively add value to your audience and build your brand and your reputation, and you're going to come out ahead. So that's my encouragement to get us kicked off. Tim Morgan, talk to us about perspective and creativity in a time like this.
All right, thank you, Tim. And in his own right, Tim's quite a successful man. He's started a couple of very successful companies. He's I would say a high-tech whiz kid, but he's not so much a kid anymore. Anyway, perspective. I don't know what you're going through. I know some of you, I don't know many of you. So I'm going to share it from my perspective. As Jim said, I coach several clients. I also own several businesses, and I'm just going to walk you through my journey and where we are today and how I'm coaching my clients I'll keep it brief. Maintain perspective. The first thing, I've said this for years. My dad probably taught me this. It's never as good as it looks, and it's never as bad as it looks. You got to maintain perspective. Something great happens and we tend to go overboard, get too excited about it, and then it doesn't pan out. Something bad happens, we immediately knee-jerk react. We go to the worst case scenario. This is pretty much, for some of you, this may be the worst case scenario. Think about when Tim talks about our business selling $1 billion worth of products or more than that. One of our companies two of our companies sell to the Christian market. We sell inspirational gifts to the Christian market. They've closed down every store in the Christian market nationwide, including our distributors. They're closed. They've also asked all schools to close. So all the schools are closed at this point. So what do you do? It's never as good as it looks. It's never as bad as it looks. Our revenue will be down this month 85% based on what we're projecting for the next 3 months. One thing you have to do is when adversity comes, you have to be humble. And I think humility is a key point here. And what do I mean by humble? Humility is not be too proud to make tough decisions, not be too proud to pivot and do something you don't really want to do. You may think, that's not us, we're too good for that. We're not going to move to a cheaper facility. We have this, with this look we want to project. Humility is being willing to make the right choices to save your business and not be proud and arrogant. So that's the first thing. So it's never as good as it looks, and be humble. Be creative. Back to my company, there's always an opportunity. Now, we're a sales organization. One thing I always tell my people, we're a sales organization. If we can't survive in a bad economy, who's going to? Everyone needs sales. Tim's point is exactly right. Most companies make the mistake, and when something like this happens, the first thing they cut is sales and marketing. And that's, to me, that's the biggest mistake you can make. I've run companies, large companies, through really bad situations. And when I focused on sales, I learned this early in my career, those companies came out stronger on the backside. Being creative. So back to what I was telling you, I've got a company that sells to Christian bookstores. Last August, one of my sales guys made a contact with a product person at a gift show. And then in January, we actually signed their line. Now, it's funny, their line had nothing to do with inspirational product or the Christian market. They happen to have this thing called a cootie key. You remember when you were a kid, you got cooties? That's what it's called. It's called the cootie key. And what it is, it's a device you can use to open doors without touching them. And we thought, oh, that's kind of novel. It's early January. We'd never heard of COVID. Well, think about that now. I have the cootie key. Not only do we have a cootie key, The guy has masks, disposable masks that you see everyone has to have. And he's got the KN95s, and eventually we can get the N95s. And he's flying them in from China, so we have masks now. So what looked like we were going to be down 85 to 90% over the next quarter, we're talking to American Airlines, we're talking to the city of Mesa, Arizona, we're talking to major hospital systems. We may have the best quarter we've had in years because we were willing to pivot. We were willing to take a product that was not exciting, didn't look like anything we would take. We were willing to pick it up because that's novel. We'll see what happens. And now the Lord has opened all kinds of doors for us. So you can do the same thing. Look for opportunities. I've got a couple of other companies I work with. One is a large camp. Can you imagine what Christian camps, what camps are going through right now? They don't know if they're going to be open this summer. What do you do? You're a camp and they're canceling every week out. Well, our focus is you go from creative and online. Then my next point is you need to then pivot and get creative with what you're selling, get creative with how you're selling. Michael's going to talk about pivoting and focusing on selling in an indirect method where you're not face to face. I could talk about that, but I'm not going to. We've had to do that. We've had to take 25 salespeople and make them phone reps. We've pivoted into that. There again, they don't like it. They like to be face to face. But what we've done also is pivot big time to social media, email marketing, those types of marketing. When you're a Christian camp, you minister to people. That's what you do. So right now, the camp is creating a series of videos that can minister to people because everybody's a homeschool parent right now. They'll help these families with their homeschooling. They're going to give them daily devotionals. They're going to give them inspirational videos. They're going to give them fun videos. They're going to create possibly even Zoom meetings like this where they bring in youth pastors from across the country and get them together, share ideas on how do you minister during this period of time. We've got another company we deal with that is a music company, and they have a kids program. Well, nobody's buying kids products right now, so what did they do? They created an online 30-minute kids program. And they started it was on the fly, and they've got between 6,000 and 15,000 people watching their kids program twice a week. Now think of the impact, what Tim is talking about. Think about the long-term impact that will have to those customers. They're home with their kids. They're saving us. They're giving us time away from Netflix and some other things. So my challenge to you is keep perspective. Never as good as it looks is never as bad as it looks. Be innovative. Look around. Look for opportunities. Be positive. You have to project that to your people too. Include your people. Don't think you're the all end all. I did not solve the mask problem. I have really good people who brought that to my attention. Be a leader that's positive. And then the third one is take advantage of those opportunities. And as Tim said, get online and use that to your benefit. And with that, I'm going to pass to Michael so that he has some time.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. What I wanted to share a little bit with you guys today is about really the core of what being in person is about. When you think about selling and you think about in-person selling, what you're really working with is relationships and trust. And that is something that we've really depended upon, we've leaned upon in sales, the ability to use in-person connection in order to be able to build that we can then build a sales relationship on. So I was thinking, that really is changing. Certainly it's changed, drastically and immediately for the next several weeks or months or whatever we're going to be dealing with. But it really is changing overall. And I was thinking about when has that kind of thing changed? When has trust and relationship changed with regard to the two major things in sales, which is prospecting and maintaining customers? When I think back, and this is going to go back a few years, a couple of my examples here. When you think about dating, when you think about engaging in perhaps starting a new relationship with someone that you're interested in dating. Back in the 80s, you would need to, at some point, when you wanted to do that, at least back when I was in high school, you had to face the big spot of, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call into her house that has one phone that's probably answered by her dad, and I'm going to have to talk to him before I can, have any conversation with her about whether she's interested or not, right? Well, that's obviously changed a lot these days. Kids are, they readily share texting and Facebook messaging and all these things, and they kind of lead up to that big spot with much smaller little steps than we had available to us back then. And the same is true in sales. We're going to lead up to those things in smaller steps than what we've done, where we crash through the door, we impose ourselves physically in your office, and we build a relationship with you in that way. Another example is maintaining trust with customers. I think back around the same time frame, there was a truck stop, Flying J, that was here. I'm from Iowa, and it was news to me that the trust level with customers wasn't the trust level I was used to here in the Midwest, everywhere. Well, that truck stop had some issues with some drive-offs, and they really had to do something about it. This was before you could put a credit card into the gas dispenser, the fuel dispenser. So what they did, their answer, because they knew that if they were to make people come in and pay, that they would lose all their local customers, because we would say, what kind of trust is that for a customer? We're going to go someplace where we're trusted. They hired people to stand out there and write down the license plates and the amount of gas that's been dispensed. They took the expense of doing that because they didn't want to have the effect of changing the trust equation with their customers of making them come in and prepay. Now, obviously, that's changed as credit card machines have come in, but the point is there was a change that had to happen, and we figured out how to adjust, even though there was a change in what was going on. But the bottom line is people are still getting married, and they're still patronizing businesses that they like and trust, despite the fact that there was change. One of the responses that some of us have, and I must admit I have some of this too, is that we try to wait for things to go back. When you think back to 9/11, you could actually go with a family member all the way down to the gate if you wanted to. You could get a pass to go do that. You didn't have to have little bottles of 2 ounces. You didn't have to get there an hour in advance and take your shoes off and do all these other things. Some things have come back. Some things are easier. We have TSA free, but things have changed and they didn't go back. And so waiting, I think, and saying, well, this is just going to all pass and everything's going to go back to normal, that's probably not going to work. How have Facebook and video calls changed extended family relationships? How has that changed the opportunity and the ability and the integration for grandparents to integrate with their grandchildren, and video calls and being able to see pictures immediately of playtime that day and things like that? Well, from a sales perspective, what are some of the new tools? Well, one business partner that I work with is using a product from a company called OneMob, and it does what are called video emails. So the idea is that when you send an email, instead of typing a bunch of things, you actually record a quick video, and that video is embedded in there. When they open it up, that video is what they see instead of text. And it's a fairly simple concept, but think about the difference in the way that you absorb and that you digest video content versus written content. We have Zoom and Google Meet. One of my customers has recently done a video manufacturing plant tour. Normally, the customer would come on site and would walk around and see everything, and they use video to be able to do that. And the customer, in a call that I was involved in just the other day, was extremely happy with how that worked. And I have a feeling that they may do more of that even after COVID is done. Delivery services. Everybody has seen, the guy with the underwear on from Domino's, who's getting the contactless pizza delivery. But instead of going out on site, one of my building tool supply companies is ordering lunch and having it delivered to the job site, and then having and them knowing that was as a result of their relationship with that customer. And another one of my customers that's in the commercial supply business is a part of a large association across the country of similar commercial supply companies. And they have identified that there's been a 68% increase in their e-commerce business in the last 3 weeks. So e-commerce, video emails, video calls and Zoom, delivery services, these are just some of the newer tools, if you will, that are available to use in sales that we need to be able to incorporate, just like the credit card machine or the the chat and text that we were talking about in the previous examples. The new sales reality, folks, this is new. People buy solutions from people that they like and trust and who bring value and convenience. Oh, I guess that isn't too new. It's the same. Nothing about the road or the destination has fundamentally changed, just the vehicles. We still find people who can benefit from our solutions, we hunt, and we build up people who depend on us, and we farm. So the point is that while the cheese has moved, in many ways, we're still playing the same game. We just have different tools that we're using. So let's talk about some immediate selling ideas that we can use during this pandemic. Building and growing trust and camaraderie are the primary outcomes of personal contact, and we've got to have alternatives. So let's talk about hunting. During this specific time, during the next few weeks, months, whatever we're all sitting in our homes, what is the best way to go hunting? What's the best way to prospect? It's referrals. People are much more in touch with helping others, and they're often in a more casual environment right now. And what's interesting is the statistics even before now is that 83% of pleased clients are willing to give a referral, but only 13 to 26%, depending on which study you look at, of salespeople are actually asking for referrals. It's a woefully underused tool that people are not actively, proactively going for. They passively accept them whenever they happen to come. If you got one, imagine how many you'd get if you asked people for them. So an insurance industry client that I have was trying to figure this out, and they reached out to a general agent. Now that would be an agency that sells to the retail agents, and they purvey the insurance to the retail agents. And they work with them, and what they did was they said, hey, would you be willing to reach out to your retail agents, your customers, that we work with through you? And we would be willing to have an appointment with them to talk to them, and we'd be willing to give them a DoorDash certificate. Since we can't travel, we're not experiencing the travel costs of going out on site, so we're going to give them DoorDash certificate as a way to get them lunch so that we can have lunch with the client. And if you would send out an email that introduces us to them and why we're calling, that would be great. And it's been a really, really great undertaking, effort. The point is, get some referral sources, get those working, and people are going to be fairly understanding and accepting of it. They want to help others in this time frame, and they're in a more casual environment where they're more willing and able to take that on. Referrals also give a boost to initial trust, and they short circuit that need for in-person. So the person receiving the referral feels more comfortable talking to you in this environment instead of feeling, very closed off like we are right now, like we need to distance ourselves and everything else. The referral opens that door for you. Perfect time to turn that on if you haven't drained the swamp of your referral opportunities within your organization. So let's talk about marketing quick.
Am I the only person not hearing Michael?
Yeah, we can't hear him.
Michael, we lost you.
Yeah,
Michael?
we lost you, Michael.
Michael, we've lost your sound.
I'll text him.
Okay, why don't we move to questions now, okay? What reactions does anyone have, or what questions do you have for any of our three folks, because I think we've surpassed our 30 minutes. And these guys are excited about helping you, and that's great. But what questions do you have for any of the folks or for me? Happy to hear those now. Make sure you unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm back now.
Michael, we've now surpassed our suggested 30 minutes. I'm asking folks now to just provide questions to any of us if they wish. And then if we have time, certainly we could jump back if that's all right. Please jump in with any questions you have. If you don't, we're going to turn it back to Michael Anderson. These guys are very experienced and knowledgeable and eager to help and provide. I thought some of these tidbits were tremendous. I mean, can you imagine? I was just thinking about something. We are considering going forward doing some sort of group coaching. Could you imagine just a nice gesture of providing lunch to people around the country for people in your meeting with them, even though you're remote, providing lunch at their local place? I thought that was a great little suggestion. What other thoughts do you have or questions? Please, chat is open, or certainly using your microphone.
Good day, this is Mark Schreiber. Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes, Mark.
Great. It's just a simple kind of, it's kind of 101 for marketing communications, but with this type of environment, I don't want to make any assumptions. I know a lot of businesses, a lot of our clients are getting hammered with lots and lots of emails communicating, status updates regarding how they're working and such. So obviously we don't want to add to the noise by putting out blanket email communications to our clients or potential clients because it will not be seen. So obviously kind of personalized communications really seems to be what resonates better. Any other tips on how you would, formulate your communications going out to clients, potential customers in this environment that, really does add to that personality, that personal touch and communication?
Mark, I will start and let Tim join or any of these guys jump in. But I was talking to one of our folks, and the truth is that it feels like a lot of people actually are telling you they want to help you, but they're taking advantage of this crisis for their own benefit, it feels. And I don't know if you sense that as well, but it appears disingenuous. And certainly a lot of these communications, there are numerous ones. And so I think it's an interesting point that there is an abundance of communication and actually cutting through that one thing. And the other thing is cutting through that for the benefit of your client. Any of the panelists have a comment on that?
Well, one of the things we've done, Mark, I'm a firm believer in giving before asking. Tim Joyner is a big proponent of that also. What we have done, we have huge customer bases. During the PPP for registration, we sent a series of "this is how you do it" emails to our clients. Didn't sell anything, it was purely, and we had each salesperson personalize that email to everybody else.
The MSI price sheet, is that something that's on your computer, or did you send that to me?
Lynette, are you
Or is that a
trying to be
website?
unmuted? Jim, I think as a host, you might be able to mute her. I think Lynette, you came off mute accidentally.
Just a minute.
There we go. Go ahead, Tim.
Anyway, and we've had a lot of success. We've done it across all of our business. So we've taken the opportunity, anything informative. Face it, I want to keep my bookstores open. So any information I can give them that helps them get government funds, helps them get through this. I want to remove as much fear. So we did that to the stores. We also did it to the schools. As soon as we found out that schools were eligible, how this worked with nonprofits, we collected all the information. We sent helpful links. We sent out Jim's video from last week to 22,000 people. Just helpful stuff. And we did it in a personal manner. Hope that helps.
Mark, I'll be really brief, but two things. If you can reach out personally, I think that's most valuable. Obviously, if you have a huge client base, that may not be possible. Even in those cases, though, if you have a sales force, you might be able to coach your sales force and provide even some templates and how they can be personal one-on-one. I'll give you a quick example. I don't know if any of you use Shipt, the grocery delivery service, but Shipt really quickly started providing to their shoppers. So Shipt is kind of like Uber for grocery shopping, right? You can sign up to go shop for somebody else for groceries, and you take their shopping list and you deliver it to their door. Obviously that has exploded in recent days. But they provided scripts to their shoppers to use to text the person who's actually ordering the groceries. Things like, I don't know what the exact script said, but basically like, hey, I'm getting ready to walk into, Publix for you. And the store is experiencing overcrowding, and there are a lot of products that are low. And so I may have to do some substitutions, but I'm going to be in close communication with you. Please keep your phone handy. I want to make this successful and serve you as much as it was better than that, of course. But the point is, they like preloaded this huge army of shoppers with drag and drop text messages that they could send via their app, so that somebody wasn't, trying to come up with that on the fly. So that was a way to communicate personally at scale. If you're Delta, you can't do that. You've got to do it at scale. But in the case of, like I told you about Delta earlier, I think they've done a really good job of keeping the customer at the center. It's all about the customer. What are we doing to make life better for you? How are we addressing your fears and your needs at this time? But personally, I'll end with this. I mentioned on this call a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a consultant who said during the 2008 downturn, crisis, whatever we want to call that, the whole economy seized up. And he went to his clients one by one, took them all to lunch, which of course we can't do now in person, but he took them all to lunch. And he said, look, this isn't about business. I'm not trying to sell anything. I just want to know what you're excited about once we get through all this and we get to the other side and the economy is rebounded. What are you most excited about doing? And he said they all just lit up because they've been, it's doom and gloom everywhere. And they started talking about their plans for the future. And he said that was his best quarter on record, because they all said basically at the end, look, let's not wait. Let's get on with it. And can you help me implement these things? And so, Mark, I would just say, if you can be personal, do so. Try to figure out how you can get people excited about their futures and how can you support their goals. Let them be the hero. You be the guide, to borrow from StoryBrand and Donald Miller. How can you be the guide that helps them be a hero, whatever they're trying to accomplish? And if you can do that personally, great. If you have to do it at scale, figure out how to be customer centric, and maybe you can use intermediaries like a Salesforce. Hope that's helpful. Good question.
Thank you very much.
I have two questions I'm interested in hearing the panel address. The first one is how we're talking about over communicating can be helpful, but where is over communicating too much communicating? And I'll give one example. That's my electric company. They initially, along with every other company I think that has my email address, sent me an email about what they were doing. And then this week I got another email from them saying, and here's what we're still doing, and we'll be sure to keep sending you lots of updates. And I was like, I really don't need to hear from my electric company. And I was thinking probably the majority of their customers don't, a few might. So where's over communicating a problem and where is it helpful? So that's question number one. Question number two is, I was reading an article yesterday about how a lot of marketing plays on, especially right now, is playing on people's fears, and it's increasing those fears, and it's kind of fear mongering. So how can you not, in marketing especially, not play to people's fears, but play to their needs and try and maybe increase peace and comfort while still marketing your product? So those are 2 questions.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Great questions. How much is too much communication, and how can you not be a fearmonger and play on people's fears? Yeah, great questions. Tim Morgan, you got something to say on that?
Well, the first thing, you know your market, you know your customers. We're trying to communicate appropriate information to our customers that we know actually does benefit them. So we're not so much communicating about what we're doing. If I was a restaurant, I probably would create a series of videos showing how clean I am and how we are going to, you know, coming out of this thing, we're going to be the cleanest restaurant, the most trusted restaurant in town. But when it comes to delivering a message to your customer, think about what they're going through and provide them anything you can that will help them get through this. Positive messaging, sharing other people, you know, if somebody shares something and you're like, wow, this is my market, this will hit those people, share it. You want to be viewed as a source of someone, Tim said it very, very well. You want to be viewed as a trusted source that is all about the customer, not about yourself. That's where he's talking about Delta. I don't really care what other companies are doing for COVID. That's nice that they're washing their hands. I'm glad restaurants are finally washing their hands. I think that's a good thing. But just always think of it in terms of your customer. If you were your customer, what do you need right now? Because you're probably exactly where they are. This is crazy. We're seeing something that is historical. So never as good as it seems, never as bad as it seems, but it is pretty crazy.
Stephanie, and it seems like the golden rule kind of applies here, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And, you know, you can think about what would be useful to my clients, what is relevant, right? Your electric company, what they're doing is probably not especially relevant to you or anybody else. As long as the power stays on, you're good, right? Maybe there's an opportunity for an occasional email or two from them, but think about, is this actually serving my client? Is this useful to them? Or is this just me, you know, checking some box that, okay, I sent my weekly email today? And then how can you not fearmonger? I mean, that there are different schools of thought on that, right? There are some sales people that would say, you know, fear and uncertainty and doubt are your favorite tools, right? And play on people's fears. That's not my style at all. I mentioned, you know, more of a hopeful, creative leadership, provide value, ask what people are excited about. And that certainly is my style. And I think what has been successful for me and for lots of other people. So in general, focus on the opportunity, find the joy in the snow. Don't talk so much about the snow. Don't ignore the snow, but don't talk so much about the snow and how awful it is to have to shovel all the snow. Talk about the beauty of the snow and what the opportunities are. I don't know if that helps. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, the phrase that I've always heard is bring a bottle of wine to every party. The point of that is ensure that when you're coming to someone, make sure that you're bringing something of value. So I agree. I had a president, one of my clients, I helped them use something called the relationship matrix, which is out of my materials. And we identify customers on spectrum from awful to amazing and prospect to partner. And we took his amazing partners, and he made 50 personal calls last week, personal calls, reaching out, seeing how their family was, seeing what was going on, expressing personal interest in them and what was going on in their business. One other quick comment that I'll make on the reach out and touch someone, which is I think where I got cut off, is you know, a lot of people are suddenly working from home, and they may not have certain office supplies that they need, like maybe a stapler or a 3-ring punch. If you're looking for a way to reach out to people where you can't necessarily, you got too many to call and spend that personal time with, you know, what are some things that would matter to them? What are some things that would actually help their day, right? And this is the time to send those things or to bring those things to the communication. And so I'm just adding in there things that aren't even, you know, actual communication, but are interactions or touches that you're doing. Make sure that you're always looking at it through their eyes and what will be of value to them in this current circumstance.
Good. Thank you, Michael. Other questions?
I don't have a question. I have a comment.
This-
Yeah, go ahead,
Whitney.
Whitney.
There's a local restaurant in my area that I think has done an exceptional job at communicating during this time. And the restaurant owner has about 700 employees. And he's just taken this time, and I fully believe that he's the one writing these emails. But I get one about every other day, and I read every word of it, because what he's doing is telling the stories of what's going on with his employees. And they're authentic. He's been very raw, very open. You know, this is a crazy time. Initially, it started like, this is what I'm dealing with, and anything you can do to help would be great. But after that first week, they've been stories of gratitude, of these are what my employees have done for other people. This is what we're doing for the community. They're opening up. Any first responder, any healthcare worker can come, and they will feed them. You know, things like that make you indirectly, you go, I just want to support them. I just want to support what they're doing. So I think this is a great time for storytelling in a really authentic way, because as you guys mentioned earlier, people are in the mindset to help each other. And just by telling these stories, he is creating this sense of heart. You know, there's a feeling of heart around his company now that maybe wasn't there before. So I just wanted to share that.
What a great story, Whitney. Thank you for sharing that. And that plays right into the idea of, you know, demonstrating empathy and humanity and authenticity and, you know, winning the hearts and minds of your clients and prospects and community. And that I don't, you know, I have to believe that he's not being, you know, mercenary or manipulative or whatever. I think that probably is authentic, but the side effect of that is that he's going to have incredible brand loyalty coming out, right? Whenever he opens, he's not going to have to worry about filling up his restaurant. That's great.
Well, and I want to jump in on that, Whitney. That is so great. Thank you. You know, I don't know if a lot of you do a lot of public speaking, I'm sure, but if you ever have an audience that appears to be disengaged or disinterested, tell a story. It is absolutely amazing, the alertness. We love stories, and to the extent, as Whitney rightly said, you're authentic. It is a powerful way to market in these days especially. So thanks again, Whitney. Bob Jones, are you still on here? And would you be willing to tell us your story of how you've pivoted at this point?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
We have pivoted. I spoke to this a couple weeks ago on the call. We sell 98.5% of our product directly to restaurants. As you can imagine, that business is just a little slow right now. I have probably 5 restaurants actually in the U.S. that are still open. I don't know how they're open or why they're open, but I've got a little bit of that business and a little bit of private chef business who these private chefs cook for wealthy families who are all at home now. So their business has increased. But we pivoted to home delivery, delivering our products that at one time were only available to professional chefs, now available to home cooks. That business has exploded, as you can imagine. Our biggest issue right now is the fact that the average invoice is about 1/4 of what it used to be. And so our package count, FedEx is loving us right now. Our package count is increased, and our revenue we're almost back to 50%. We were at about 15% in week 1, and we're slowly climbing that hill. Our vision is that when we come out of this in the next 6 to 8 weeks, that we will have 2 distinct audiences. One of those being the professional chefs, depending on how many of those restaurants actually do reopen. But the secondary audience being the home consumer. It's a completely different product mix. It's different packaging. We've been very, very blessed in that through social media. Many of our chef customers who we actually sent gift boxes to took videos of the meals that they were preparing with the gift boxes we sent them, and then are pushing that out, and their followings are now turning around and ordering the product that they used to consume in these restaurants. So those free boxes are paying back dividends. You folks have mentioned that already. Being authentic, being real, it's a very fine line. I think we have to make sure that we're doing these things for the right reasons. Getting good, fresh, homegrown produce into consumers' hands right now is really important from the health and wellness aspect, but doing that in a way and marketing that in a very authentic and real way, I think is huge, because it can go south on you if you're not careful. It is growing. We're blessed to have the growth. We're able to keep the lights on. We're able to keep people working. We feel very, very fortunate for that. And when we come out of this, we'll actually be able to grow revenue by having two different audiences to work with.
This is a company called the Chef's Garden. Bob is the CEO. They're based in Huron, Ohio, up near Lake Erie. And when the boxes of vegetables come every couple of weeks, that is a highlight for me. Absolutely love it. So I said there wouldn't be any selling on here, but if you want to take a look at that and some home delivery of wonderful vegetables, give that a look.
And just to capture, thank you for sharing that story, Bob. Just to capture that, one of the cool things that Bob and his team at Chef's Garden did right away is all these restaurants had shut down, 85% plummeted sales, but he sent out these home delivery boxes that are intended for home consumption to all of these chefs, many of whom had Instagram and other social media followings. And these chefs then took to the airwaves, internet airwaves, and talked about these amazing high quality vegetables from the Chef's Garden and how they got this box, and show, pictures and video of them producing it, and basically all marketing, not being paid to do so, but just out of love for Bob and his group, all of a sudden had all of this groundswell of interest. So well done, and we're pulling for you, Bob, to get through all this.
I appreciate that. There's an interesting sideline that I meant to mention. One of the chefs that got that box had several vendors. Thomas Keller, as many of you probably are aware of, has a restaurant in Yountville, California called the French Laundry. About a 6-month wait to get a reservation. He also has Per Se in New York City. He laid off 2,500 employees across the country in all of his different businesses. But he saw that not only was the restaurant industry suffering, but his vendors were suffering. He very quickly got a group of 5 chefs together from around the country and developed recipes using products from multiple vendors. So one of the offerings that we just happened to be ready and able to ship and pivot to home delivery quick enough, we have a box going out now. We're vegetable growers. It's all we've ever done. But we have boxes going out now that have our vegetables and have premium lamb and also premium hand-churned butter from Vermont. The lamb's coming from Pennsylvania. The butter's coming from Vermont. And Thomas Keller put together a recipe. He opened the box on camera in his home kitchen and did a 35-minute video on how to present an Easter meal. And you can buy those packages in 2 counts and 4 counts. They've now pivoted that into a 5-week project. Each week will be a different chef. Gavin Kaysen out of Minneapolis, Danielle Balut out of New York. These are names that, if we were trying to establish an e-commerce business, I would have never been able to afford to get these chefs to sponsor or back that project. But he is very in tune to not only his team, but also his vendor relationships that he's had for 25 years, and saying, how can we help each other? a percentage of these sales from these boxes are going back to his 501c that he is helping support his team. So it's kind of we tried to stack this a little bit. So you're getting lamb, you're getting butter, you're getting vegetables, and oh, by the way, a portion of each one of these boxes is going back to support his team. There are opportunities that exist in this space, as Michael has spoken about, and several others. I'm reminded of the old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think that's exactly what this is.
Wow. That's
Very
very cool.
poignant.
Thank you, Bob.
And very poignant and profound. Thank you so much, Bob. I want to thank Michael Anderson, Tim Morgan, and Tim Joyner. And if you have any questions or follow up, please contact us at info@broadinsights.com. But I really want to thank them, and I want to respect your time. I think our hour is up. This has been recorded on the cloud, and we can get this recording to you if you wish. We had a number of people listen to many more than were actually on the call last week. So I would encourage you next week to join us at 10 o'clock for a totally different subject. But here we've got an opportunity to think a little differently and plan a little better as a result of this reprieve that we've currently had of our normal activities. So I would encourage you to do so. Is there